elderly couple couldn't pay their Christmas Eve bill. While they faced an embarrassing moment, one waiter secretly stepped in. What happened the next day changed his life forever. This story is going to touch your heart and remind you that Christmas miracles still exist. Please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's free and means the world to us during these early days. Thank you. The crystal glasses clinked gently as Robert Anderson raised his hand to get the waiter's attention. The holiday lights twinkled through the restaurant's grand windows, casting a warm glow across their corner table at La Maison, the city's most exclusive French restaurant. Eleanor, his wife of 40 years, smiled warmly as she watched the young families and couples enjoying their Christmas Eve dinner around them. "Tom," Robert called out to their waiter, a young man in his late 20s with kind eyes and an earnest smile. "We'd like to add something special to our bill tonight." He gestured around the restaurant. "It's Christmas Eve, and we'd like to add a $100 bonus tip for each staff member working tonight. Could you have that included in our final bill?" Tom's eyes widened slightly, but his professional demeanor never wavered. "Of course, Mr. Anderson. That's very generous of you. We have 12 staff members working tonight." Eleanor reached across the table to squeeze her husband's hand. This was their tradition-spreading joy on Christmas Eve. As one of the city's most successful real estate developers, they had made it their mission to share their good fortune, especially during the holidays. "Perfect," Robert nodded. "And Tom, please add an extra special tip for yourself. Your service has been exceptional tonight." The evening progressed perfectly. The duck confit was exquisite, the wine pairings impeccable. As they finished their crème brûlée, Robert reached into his jacket pocket for his wallet. His hand froze. He checked the other pocket, then all his pockets again, his movements becoming increasingly frantic. "Eleanor," he whispered, his face paling. "I can't find my wallet." Eleanor's smile faded as she quickly opened her evening bag. "I didn't bring mine tonight. You said you were handling everything." The bill sat innocently on the table, totaling $1,247 with all the extra tips they'd requested. Robert's mind raced back through their evening. The short walk from the parking garage, the crowd of last-minute shoppers they'd pushed through. From across the restaurant, Mike, another waiter, watched the scene unfold with growing suspicion. He'd seen this before. Wealthy people pretending to forget their wallets, making a scene, trying to get free meals. He approached the table just as Tom was returning to check on them. "Is there a problem here?" Mike's voice carried just enough edge to draw attention from nearby tables. Robert looked up, his face flushed with embarrassment. "My wallet seems to be missing. We may have been pickpocketed on our way in. If we could just make a phone call—" Mike scoffed, cutting him off. "Sure, just like the last couple who tried this trick. You people think because it's Christmas Eve, we'll just let you walk out of here?" Tom stood quietly behind Mike, watching the scene unfold. His mind wandered to last Christmas Eve, sitting beside his mother's hospital bed, counting coins to buy her a small gift from the hospital gift shop. He thought about the chemotherapy she needed now, treatment they couldn't afford. Something about the genuine distress in the Andersons' eyes touched him deeply. Eleanor's voice trembled slightly. "Please, we can sort this out. We're regular customers here." "Regular customers should know better than to pull stunts like this," Mike continued, his voice rising, "especially on Christmas Eve when we're all working instead of being with our families." Tom slipped away quietly, pulling out his own wallet as he walked to the payment terminal. He'd been saving every extra dollar for his mother's treatment, but something told him this was the right thing to do. Without a word, he paid the entire bill, including all the extra tips the Andersons had requested. When he returned, the manager had joined the tense scene. Tom smoothly interrupted. "Mr. Anderson, your bill has been taken care of. There seems to have been a processing issue with your original payment method. Everything is fine now." The Andersons looked confused, but Tom's steady gaze and slight shake of his head kept them from questioning further. They left the restaurant that night with heavy hearts, their Christmas Eve tradition tainted by embarrassment and confusion. But the story was far from over. The next morning, while most families were unwrapping presents, Robert Anderson sat in his home office making calls. His wallet had indeed been stolen. The police found it discarded in a trash can near the restaurant. Cash and cards missing. But that wasn't what occupied his mind. "Eleanor," he called to his wife, who was arranging Christmas cookies on a plate. "Something doesn't add up about last night. That young waiter, Tom, the way he handled everything." Eleanor set down the plate and joined her husband. "I was thinking the same thing. Did you notice how he avoided looking at us directly when he said our payment had processed?" Robert nodded, reaching for his phone again. This time he called La Maison's owner, Marcus, a longtime business associate. "Robert, Merry Christmas. I heard about what happened last night. I'm terribly sorry about Mike's behavior. He's been dealt with accordingly. Marcus, I need to know something. Who actually paid our bill?" There was a long pause on the line. "Robert, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but it was Tom. He used his own credit card. When I found out this morning, I tried to reverse the charge, but he refused." Eleanor, listening on speakerphone, gasped softly. "That bill was over $1,200. "Yes," Marcus continued. "And from what I know about Tom's situation, well, he's been picking up extra shifts whenever possible. His mother is sick. Cancer, I believe. He's been trying to save up for her treatment." The Andersons exchanged a look that spoke volumes. They'd built their fortune not just through business acumen, but through recognizing genuine kindness and integrity when they saw it. "Marcus, I need you to do something for me." Over the next few days, while Tom continued working his shifts, the Andersons set their plan in motion. First, they contacted the hospital where Tom's mother was being treated. It took some doing, but with their connections and resources, they arranged to cover her entire treatment plan anonymously. Then, through Marcus, they arranged for Tom to attend what he thought was an exclusive 2-day training seminar for promising restaurant staff. In reality, this gave them time to prepare the surprise of a lifetime. Tom didn't question the training opportunity, though saying goodbye to his mother for 2 days was difficult. She insisted he go, smiling mysteriously. What he didn't know was that while he was away, she was being moved to the city's best private cancer center, all arrangements already made. When Tom returned to work 3 days later, Marcus called him into the office. The Andersons were waiting there, along with his mother, who was glowing with a hope he hadn't seen in months. "I don't understand," Tom stammered, looking between them all. "Mom, why are you here?" Robert stood, approaching Tom with the same dignity he'd shown that Christmas Eve night. "Tom, we know what you did. We know you paid our bill, all $1,247 of it out of your own pocket." Tom's face flushed. "Mr. Anderson, I just couldn't stand seeing you both treated that way. It wasn't right." Eleanor joined her husband, tears in her eyes. "You gave up your savings meant for your mother's treatment to help 2 strangers maintain their dignity on Christmas Eve." Tom's mother reached for his hand. "Honey, while you were away, these amazing people arranged everything. My treatment, the best doctors, it's all taken care of." The room blurred as Tom's eyes filled with tears, but Robert wasn't finished. "We've been watching you, Tom. Your work ethic, your kindness, your integrity. We're not just here about the bill or your mother's treatment. We have a proposal for you." Robert pulled out a leather portfolio and placed it on Marcus's desk. "Tom, do you know what we do besides real estate development?" Tom shook his head, still trying to process everything that was happening. "We own a restaurant group, Anderson Hospitality Group, 12 restaurants across 3 states with plans for expansion. But what we've been missing is someone with both the skills and the heart to help lead that expansion. Someone who understands that success in this industry isn't just about profit margins, it's about people." Eleanor stepped forward, opening the portfolio. "We're offering you a position as our Director of Operations Training. You'll start by learning every aspect of our business from the ground up. After a year, if things go well, we want you to head our new fine dining division." Tom sat heavily in the nearest chair, his mother's hand still clutched in his. "But I'm just a waiter. I don't have the experience." "You have something better," Robert interjected. "You have integrity. That night you didn't just pay a bill. You sacrificed your own needs to protect complete strangers' dignity. That's the kind of person we want helping to build our legacy." Marcus, who had been quietly watching, spoke up. "They're right, Tom. I've been in this business 30 years, and I've never seen anyone with your combination of skills and heart." Tom's mother squeezed his hand. "This is what you've always dreamed of, honey. All those nights studying hospitality management online while working double shifts." The portfolio contained an employment contract offering a salary that made Tom's head spin, along with full benefits that would cover not just his mother's current treatment, but any future medical needs. But it was the handwritten note paperclipped to the contract that brought fresh tears to his eyes. "Your kindness on Christmas Eve reminded us why we started this business, to create places where people could celebrate life's moments with dignity and joy. Help us continue that mission." Robert and Eleanor Anderson. As Tom looked up from the contract, Robert added one more thing. "Oh, and we're taking care of your apartment lease. There's a condo closer to the office that comes with the position. Your mother will have her own space there while she recovers." Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Consider it a Christmas bonus." The next few hours passed in a blur of signatures, hugs, and happy tears. By the end of the day, Tom had a new job, a new home, and, most importantly, hope for his mother's future. As they all left Marcus's office, Mike was just arriving for his shift. His jaw dropped when he saw Tom walking out with the Andersons. Robert paused briefly beside Mike. "You see, young man, sometimes people surprise you, and sometimes what looks like someone's worst moment becomes their finest hour." Later that evening, as Tom helped his mother settle into their new condo, she pulled out a small, wrapped package. "I was saving this for when your dreams came true." Inside was a vintage silver tie pin that had belonged to his father. He always said success wasn't about how high you climb, but how many people you lift up along the way. You're just like him, honey. Tom's first year with Anderson Hospitality Group flew by in a whirlwind of learning, growth, and transformation. He approached his new role with the same dedication and compassion that had caught the Andersons' attention that Christmas Eve night. His mother's treatment progressed well, and seeing her grow stronger each day fueled his determination. He threw himself into learning every aspect of the business, often arriving first and leaving last. But unlike many who achieve sudden success, Tom never forgot his roots. His first major initiative was implementing what he called the Second Chance program. He convinced the Andersons to partner with local culinary schools to offer scholarships and apprenticeships to struggling students and people looking to rebuild their lives. Even Mike, the waiter who had doubted the Andersons that Christmas Eve, eventually found himself benefiting from Tom's program after losing his job at La Maison. "Why would you help me after how I treated you and the Andersons?" Mike had asked during his interview. Tom smiled, remembering his own journey. "Because everyone deserves a chance to prove who they really are, especially when they're ready to learn from their mistakes." 1 year to the day after that fateful Christmas Eve, Tom stood before a crowd at the grand opening of Grace and Gratitude, the flagship restaurant of Anderson Hospitality Group's new fine dining division. The name had been his idea, inspired by the grace the Andersons had shown him and the gratitude that had changed all their lives. Eleanor squeezed Robert's hand as they watched Tom address the staff before opening. "We made the right choice," she whispered. "We sure did," Robert replied, beaming with pride. He's exceeded every expectation. The restaurant's concept was unique. Every table had 2 menus. One was traditional with prices listed. The other, called the Trust Menu, had no prices. Guests could order from it and pay what they could afford. No questions asked. The program was subsidized by the restaurant's success and private donors who believed in the mission. "Some people might take advantage," Tom had explained to the board when proposing the idea, "but think about the families who can celebrate special moments here with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. That's worth more than any loss we might incur." What amazed everyone was that the restaurant not only survived, but thrived. The trust menu actually brought in more revenue than expected. Those who could afford it often paid more than standard prices, moved by the program's spirit of generosity. Tom's mother, now in remission, volunteered at the restaurant 3 days a week, greeting guests and sharing stories. Her warmth and genuine joy touched everyone she met, and she became known as Mama Grace among the staff and regular patrons. The restaurant's walls featured a subtle but meaningful design element. A series of crystal glasses reminiscent of those from that Christmas Eve night, each catching and reflecting light differently. "They remind us," Tom would tell new staff members, "that sometimes our biggest challenges reflect our brightest opportunities." As grace and gratitude flourished, its impact rippled through the community in unexpected ways. Tom established a monthly tradition called Kitchen Confidential Dinners, where aspiring chefs from underprivileged backgrounds could showcase their talents in pop-up events. Many of these chefs went on to secure positions within the Anderson Hospitality Group or start their own successful ventures. One such success story was Maria, a single mother of 3 who had been washing dishes at one of the group's casual restaurants. Tom noticed her staying late to watch the chefs prep, taking notes in a worn notebook. After learning she'd been teaching herself cooking through YouTube videos while her kids slept, he offered her a spot in their training program. 2 years later, Maria became the head chef at one of their new locations. Her signature dish? A refined version of the staff meal she used to cook for her coworkers during her dishwashing days. The thing about kindness, Tom often said at management meetings, is that it compounds like interest. The returns just keep growing. The Andersons watched their restaurant group transform under Tom's leadership. Profits increased, but more importantly, they were creating something meaningful. Employee turnover dropped to record lows. The group became known as one of the best employers in the industry, with a waiting list of people hoping to join their team. During one particularly busy service, an elderly couple came into grace and gratitude and requested the trust menu. Tom, who still made a point of working on the floor at least once a week to stay connected with staff and guests, recognized the look in their eyes, the same mix of dignity and anxiety he'd seen in the Andersons that Christmas Eve. Later, he learned they were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. They'd saved for months, but had recently spent their savings on medical bills. The husband had slipped Tom a crumpled $50 bill, all they could afford. Tom served them himself that night, ensuring they received the full anniversary experience: champagne, premium cuts, anniversary cake. As they were leaving, tears in their eyes, Tom slipped the $50 back into the husband's pocket along with a gift card for their next visit. "Your love story deserves to be celebrated," he told them. "The only payment we need is your promise to come back and share more memories with us." The couple became regular visitors, and when they could afford it, they always paid extra for the next anniversary couple who might need it. Robert visited the restaurant that night after closing, finding Tom doing paperwork in his office. The walls were covered with photos, staff graduations, customer celebrations, charity events. In the center was a framed credit card receipt from that Christmas Eve at La Maison. "You know," Robert said, settling into a chair, "when Eleanor and I started this business, we hoped to create something lasting, but you've turned it into something more. You've created a community." Tom's innovative approach to restaurant management began drawing attention from beyond the hospitality industry. Business schools requested him as a guest speaker, and national media outlets wanted to feature the trust menu concept. But what really caught people's attention was the ripple effect his initiatives had on the entire city. Other restaurants began adopting similar programs. A network of giving and support emerged, with businesses looking beyond profit margins to find ways they could serve their communities. Tom's story became a case study in how social responsibility and business success could go hand in hand. One day, a familiar face appeared at Grace and Gratitude: Marcus, his former manager from La Maison. The restaurant had been struggling since the pandemic, and Marcus was considering selling. "I remember watching you that Christmas Eve," Marcus said over coffee in Tom's office. "I knew you were something special, but I never imagined how far that one act of kindness would reach." Tom leaned forward, an idea forming. What if we didn't let La Maison close? What if we turned it into something new? With the Andersons' support, Tom proposed acquiring La Maison, but with a twist it would become a training restaurant, where every staff member was someone getting a second chance at life. Former inmates, recovered addicts, domestic violence survivors, people who needed what Tom had received, an opportunity. The renovation took 6 months. They preserved the restaurant's historic elements while modernizing its systems. The crystal glasses that had witnessed Tom's life-changing moment remained, now accompanied by a small plaque telling their story. During this time, Tom's mother's cancer showed signs of returning. The news hit him hard, but she remained optimistic. "Look at all the good that came from our darkest time," she reminded him. "Sometimes, God's greatest gifts come wrapped in our biggest challenges." The entire restaurant group rallied around them. Staff members adjusted schedules to drive her to appointments. Chefs prepared special meals to help with her appetite during treatment. The community they'd built proved stronger than any medical challenge. One evening, as Tom helped his mother into the car after her treatment, she pointed to a young woman walking into the hospital. "She reminds me of you, always checking the parking meter, counting coins." Tom watched the woman counting change in her palm, anxiety clear on her face. He remembered that feeling all too well. Walking over, he introduced himself and learned her story. Sarah was working 3 jobs to pay for her brother's cancer treatment. That night, Tom made some calls. By the end of the week, Sarah had a job at one of their restaurants and her brother was seeing the same doctors who had helped his mother. La Maison's reopening was scheduled for Christmas Eve, exactly 3 years after the night that had changed everything. The guest list included all the people whose lives had intersected with Tom's journey. The Andersons, his mother, now in her second remission, Marcus, Sarah and her recovering brother, Maria and her children, and even Mike, who had become one of their most successful restaurant managers. The renovated La Maison sparkled with holiday lights, but something else shone brighter, the pride in the eyes of its new staff, each wearing a small crystal pin that matched those historic glasses. Tom had designed these pins himself, a reminder that everyone's story deserved to sparkle. During the opening ceremony, Robert Anderson took the microphone, his voice thick with emotion. 3 years ago, in this very room, we witnessed how one person's kindness could change lives. Tonight, we're not just reopening a restaurant, we're continuing a legacy of compassion. Eleanor joined him, adding, "Tom showed us that true hospitality isn't just about serving food, it's about serving hope." The evening's menu was special. Each dish told a story. The appetizer was created by Maria, inspired by the first meal she cooked in their training program. The main course came from a recipe developed by one of their Second Chance program graduates. The dessert, a modern take on the crème brûlée Tom had served the Andersons that fateful night. As guests dined, Tom walked through the restaurant, stopping at each table to share stories. He paused longest at table 7, the same table where his journey had begun. There sat a young family, clearly counting their coins as they looked at the menu. Without a word, Tom signaled the server to use his personal account for their bill. The father looked up with tears in his eyes, having recognized Tom from the news stories about the restaurant group's charitable works. "Mr. Chen," the father started, but Tom raised his hand. "Just promise me one thing," Tom said softly. "When you're able, help someone else. That's how we change the world, one table at a time." Later that night, after the last guest had left, Tom's mother found him standing by the window looking out at the snow falling gently on the city streets. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, joining him. "I was just thinking about how different everything was 3 years ago," he replied. "We were so worried about making ends meet, about your treatment." She squeezed his hand. "And now, look at all the lives you're touching. Your father would be so proud." Tom's vision for compassionate hospitality caught the attention of a major business magazine, which featured him in their 40 under 40 inches issue. The article, titled "The Waiter Who Changed an Industry," detailed how his trust menu concept had inspired similar programs in restaurants across the country. But it was what happened next that truly amazed everyone. A group of Silicon Valley executives, moved by the story, approached Tom and the Andersons with an ambitious proposal. They wanted to create an app that would connect restaurants willing to offer trust menus with donors who could help subsidize meals for those in need. Imagine, one executive explained during their presentation, someone in New York could pay forward a meal that helps a family celebrate their child's graduation in Chicago. The app, which they named Grace Table, launched 6 months later. It allowed users to either find restaurants offering dignity-based pricing or contribute to a pool that helped support these programs. Restaurant owners could apply to join the network, provided they committed to the core principles Tom had established. During this time, Tom's mother started a support group for families dealing with cancer. They met weekly in a private dining room at Grace and Gratitude, sharing stories over meals provided by the restaurant. These gatherings became known as Mama's Kitchen Table Talks, and soon expanded to other locations in the restaurant group. "Food has always brought people together," she would say, "but hope keeps them coming back." One evening, as Tom was reviewing applications for their next training cohort, he received an unexpected visitor. It was the elderly couple from that anniversary dinner years ago. They had sold their small business and wanted to establish a scholarship fund for aspiring chefs. "You gave us more than a meal that night," the wife explained, tears in her eyes. "You gave us our dignity. Now we want to help others find theirs." The Anderson Hospitality Group continued to grow, but not just in size. They became known for their innovative approach to combining business success with social impact. Each new restaurant in their group maintained the delicate balance between profitability and purpose. Robert and Eleanor gradually stepped back from daily operations, confident in Tom's leadership. At their retirement celebration, Robert shared something he'd never told anyone. "That Christmas Eve night," he revealed, "when we discovered our wallet was missing, I was actually carrying a backup credit card in my shoe, an old habit from my traveling days. But something made me wait. Something about that young waiter's eyes told me this moment mattered more than money." As the 5th anniversary of that transformative Christmas Eve approached, Tom and the Andersons planned something extraordinary. They would close all their restaurants for one night, December 23rd, for a unique celebration they called the Night of 1,247 Dreams, named after the amount of that fateful dinner bill. The plan was ambitious. They would serve 1,247 free meals across all their locations to families nominated by community organizations. Each guest would receive not just a meal, but a chance to share their dream with the restaurant group's nonprofit foundation, which had been established earlier that year. Sarah, the young woman Tom had met outside the hospital, now ran the foundation. Her brother, fully recovered, worked alongside her. Together, they sorted through thousands of nominations, each story more touching than the last. On the night of the event, something magical happened. At each location, servers who had benefited from the Second Chance program shared their stories with guests. Chefs who had started as dishwashers prepared spectacular meals. Even Mike, who had once doubted the Andersons' honesty, gave a moving speech about how judging others limits our own potential. At Grace and Gratitude, Tom worked the floor just like old times. His mother, elegant in a blue dress that matched the crystal glasses, greeted each guest with her signature warm hug. The Andersons moved from table to table, listening to stories and dreams. One particular family caught everyone's attention. A single father with 3 kids, recently homeless after losing his job. He had been nominated by his children's school teacher. As they enjoyed their meal, the youngest daughter asked Tom a question that touched everyone who heard it. "Mr. Tom, do you think dreams come true even when you don't have enough money?" Tom knelt beside her chair, sharing the story of how he once couldn't afford his mother's treatment but never stopped dreaming. By the end of the night, The father had a job offer from one of their partner businesses, and the family had temporary housing arranged through the foundation. The evening culminated with a surprise announcement. The Silicon Valley team behind Grace Table revealed they had secured funding to expand the program internationally. Restaurants from Tokyo to London had signed up to join the movement. As midnight approached on that extraordinary evening, Tom gathered everyone in the main dining room of Grace and Gratitude. The crystal glasses that had witnessed the beginning of this journey 5 years ago were filled with sparkling cider, one for each guest, staff member, and volunteer. 5 years ago, Tom began, his voice carrying across the hushed room, a single act of kindness in this city changed not just my life, but created a ripple effect that has touched thousands of lives. Tonight, we served our 100,000th Trust Menu meal. But, more importantly, we've served something far more valuable: hope. Robert and Eleanor Anderson stood beside him, their eyes glistening with tears. Eleanor held up her glass. To everyone who has ever felt lost, forgotten, or unseen, you matter. Your dignity matters. Your dreams matter. Tom's mother joined them, now 5 years cancer-free. Sometimes life's greatest challenges are actually doorways to our biggest blessings, she said. You just have to be brave enough to walk through them and kind enough to hold the door open for others. The room fell silent as Tom revealed one final surprise. Starting tomorrow, every single one of our restaurants will have a special Table 7, just like the one where my journey began. These tables will always be reserved for those who need a place to celebrate life's moments but can't afford to, because everyone deserves to feel special, to feel seen, to feel worthy. He raised his crystal glass, the same one from that Christmas Eve night, now mounted in a special display case. To kindness, to second chances, and to the power of believing in people. Sometimes, the smallest acts of compassion can create the biggest changes. We just have to be brave enough to take that first step. The crystal glasses clinked together as the clock struck midnight, their sound echoing through the room like bells of hope. Outside, snow began to fall, just as it had on that life-changing night 5 years ago. Remember, every day presents us with opportunities to change someone's life. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as our biggest challenges. We just need the courage to be kind and the faith to believe in the goodness of people.